I broke my glasses yesterday. Had to super glue them back together. Had to walk to the store down the road from my shop with no glasses on, and then find super glue in the store with no glasses on.
And you're pretty blind.
Yeah. And now I have a big globe of super glue on my glasses that I can see until my new glasses get here.
Yeah. Oh, so you really,
well.
Of course you had to order them. Well, listen, they don't have tape on them. I can't see that. So you must have done a good job with the glue.
Well, I mean, fairly good job. I got them.
You don't have a spare pair of glasses?
No.
I mean, I don't wear glasses, but like I know, like Becky
I do
has
have
like
a spare pair of glasses
pairs.
because I do always worry I'm going to lose them or sit on them or something.
Listen, you know what kind of man child I am, right? And I get a new pair of glasses when I break the last pair.
So you don't do the every 2 years go get new glasses thing.
No. Who does that?
Hello, my wife. My wife has like 15 pairs of glasses.
Look at that.
Hannah,
Ahoy,
Samantha,
friends.
Nicole. Man, you guys in your ahoy.
Look at that.
Teresa?
Teresa's on here with her own
You
account.
got your own
Teresa.
account?
Look at that.
Dang.
Caroline. Is it Lilas? I can't see that small.
I think it could be Lilia's.
And you just talking about how bad my eyes are.
That's I can't. Well, oh no, I can't. There's like an IL. It's like it all.
Yeah,
it's too close together.
Lilas. Or it could be IILIAS, I guess, because
Lilius.
Because a capital
Could
I
be a
also
capital.
looks like it.
Mm-hmm.
Audio Man says the shackles are off. Hell yes. Jim. Sarah doesn't. Valeria, I missed you guys last week. We missed you too.
Valeria,
Grayson.
come on, you're the regs. Love
Brittany
it.
Hughes. Bob, I think you may want to look into. There's a very difference between I can't see the super glue at the store nor navigate to the store.
Okay, hold on.
And not being able to see.
Hold on.
Tiny prints on my computer.
I am nearsighted. Once I found where the super glue in the store would be located, I could find the super glue because it was close enough to me.
Oh yeah,
Lilius.
It was just finding it in the store.
Thanks for you're welcome, Nicole.
Lilius. It's a Lilius.
Lilius.
Great.
Get your wife some pair eyewear. Pair eyewear? What is that? What? Anna's first live. What's up, Anna?
I know. And
You're
then
about to
Rachel's
have
back. And then Lynn said,
best
oops, forgot to
experience of
smash
your life.
like back at a jiffy.
Oh yeah. Hey everybody, real
Get the
quick,
special
smash the like button.
Do we have to do this?
If you're on mobile, just X out of the live chat.
Happy birthday,
Hit like real quick. If you're on a smartphone, hit more actions, more options, reactions, hit like, and come right back into the live chat. Let's pump up the likes, folks.
Nick smashed it. Thanks, Smash. Thanks, Nick, smashing Nick. Woo!
Sure.
Is that
Man,
how...
66 watching, only 15 likes. We can get that up to 30 and just like lickety split. Look, already up to 22. Come on, let's go, folks. 67 watching, 29 likes. Let's go. Let's go.
I want to tell people to hit the other one.
It doesn't matter. Go ahead, hit the other one. The YouTube algorithm
the other one
just reads them both as interaction.
Someone give me a dislike. Give me that dislike.
But you know what? It hurts my feelings, so don't do it. Don't do it.
Just give me one fun dislike, just for fun.
What's going to happen is 20 people are going to do it, and then people are going to.
Actually, I'm glad that everybody's already talking about this because it doesn't necessarily need to be in the official follow-up. But this was on my mind because when all of this was happening, I was thinking back to when I had Rabia on the JV club, and I always play MASH with everyone, which is mansion, apartment, shack, house. It's this whole like wish fulfillment thing. And I had given her, one of the categories was like three mysteries you wish, three mysteries you'd love to see solved. And this was just a few months ago. And, one was life after death. One was something else, and then of course one was who killed Hay, and then that's the one that she got. And so I flashed to that when it started seeming like, not only do they not think Anand in it, but there might be a real chance of that being answered. So I have to assume it's because of the MASH game magic that all probably is coming together. But it's rare that a MASH wish fulfillment actually comes true. So it was like,
it's funny you brought that up. I had clients talk about that game the other day. I was tattooing a female and my partner was tattooing a female, and they were like discussing that game, and TJ and I had no idea what that game was.
Yeah.
They're like, well, you're not You're not a girl.
Well, you can play it
Yeah.
on the JV club.
You can get, yeah, you
I'll
can
play it.
when you come on, you're gonna get real familiar with it. It's
Does
a
he have to
crash
wait till next
course.
summer till you get back to your Boys of Summer?
No, I want to have you on anytime.
You let me know.
Okay,
You let
we'll
me know.
plan
You
it.
only
I'll
let me
cry
be on
whenever
in the
you need me
summer.
to.
Yeah, well, that was
Maybe-
you,
maybe-
and
Oh,
this is
and
Zach.
that's Zach, right?
Otherwise known as Jack and Zanet. Jack and Zanet in on the morning zoo this morning with Bobby Ruff.
Bye.
Oh, are we ready
Oh.
to start this show?
She's still mad at you about that.
What's she mad at me about? Jack and Zanet?
Oh no! Now we've gotten multiple dislikes as a favor to Zach.
I told you that was
Thanks a
going to happen.
lot.
Now,
Thank you.
now people are going to be like, "Oh man,
Thank you, friends.
they're going to be over in the hater group, being like, see, even his own fans don't
Oh,
like
that's
the
very
show."
funny.
You know what Bob likes to make fun of me for? That I didn't realize I did until Bob started making fun of me. Is
What?
that I thank people and I put my hands together and I do this.
He does it all the time. It's
I'll do it like I get, especially when I get
all the time.
And
You
in
might be the
Intoxicated.
only person I'm willing to accept that from and think it's charming.
all the time. People be like, excuse me, could I get another beer, please? And they were like, yeah, sure. Let me grab that for you. And he goes, thank you.
Let me ask you this: are you being sarcastic or is it like
no,
genuine?
no. I
Okay, so that's why it
genuinely
doesn't
started
bother
doing
me.
that.
It's you're not being obsequious, like, and I'm so sorry to use such a big word, but
Let me
But
look
it's
that
not,
up.
you know-
Yeah, hold on. What?
Obsequious.
What?
it's not a false. Here's what I'm saying: it's not
Okay,
a
look
false
that up to
modesty
see if I'm
thing.
offended.
No,
Okay.
when you do it, it's not a false modesty thing. Do you know what I mean? It's the you can tell in the expression, like, give me a compliment. I know it's gonna be hard, but come up with something.
Janet, you're my favorite podcaster.
That's when it's
Ob-
like, ooh, ew,
Obsequious,
Ed, you're
obedient,
awful. You're not doing that.
obedient or attentive to an excessive
It's the sort of like
or servile
oh, thank you
degree.
so much. Oh, thank you. I'm your servant. Thank
What
you.
is an obsequious person? Adjective. If you describe someone as obsequious, you are criticizing them because they are too eager to help or agree with someone more important than them. Okay.
But it can also be it can be the sort of like sarcastic version of that, where you're sort of, you know, where you're like, I'm gonna overdo
I do
it because
myself and my wife and his wife and all of our friends that are around us all do it in that manner after Zach does it, because I pointed it out to everyone, so now we all see it.
Yeah.
So he'll be like,
Uh-huh.
he'll be like, thank you, and then the other tenors are like, oh yes, thank you.
Oh no,
Zach.
no,
Thank
yes.
you. Oh,
That
no,
is
I
that is
thank you.
please.
I thank you.
So I think
I'm
what
sorry,
really
but that is
happened,
the right thing to do. You are doing that is the right response.
I know people don't
even
care
though it's
about
cute.
this, but I think the reason it started is I'm a very I'm a toucher, I'm a handshaker, I'm a hugger, and people don't like that. So it gives
I
me
do.
Uncle Zach, he's a hugger.
it gives me
Aw.
some sort of like a handshake, but I can't, if you don't want to shake my hand, then I'm just like, oh, thank you.
Takes the
Yeah.
place of sniffing them or whatever you were going to do.
That's not-
You
That's
can
not what I
always hug
do.
me or shake my hand.
Yeah, no, I'm a hugger.
You're like, I'm either going to hug you for bringing me a beer, sniff your hair, or
I don't
do this.
do
You
that.
can pick one or the other.
Listen, my sniffer doesn't work a whole lot, so I broke
right.
it too many times.
Let's start this show.
Yeah, we really
Obsequious
got to get started.
with
Thank you so much for your
bootlicker.
patience, everyone. Thank you.
My
for your
husband vows
patience.
too. He spent time in Korea. That makes sense.
That's
That's what I
legit.
thought you were going to say when you said that. I was waiting for you to say Asian. I am Asian, but you're not
Yeah.
Asian.
No, just grateful. He's just grateful. That's all.
Very grateful.
That's all.
Yeah, still trying to figure out if I'm offended or not.
Thank you all for listening.
I'm too stupid. I don't know.
And here we go. Okay. Um, all right. It's a little late by the time you're hearing this, but we definitely have incredible reason to celebrate, because on Monday, I'm sure all of you know, but Adnan Syed was freed from prison. It was amazing. I was group texting with these guys because Janet didn't want to get on the Zoom that I did.
Oh,
So I might have forgot to
Go
tell her
on.
about it.
Don't let me interrupt. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Man, what a great week. And a lot of you guys know, just spur of the moment, because I was going nuts Monday waiting for results from the hearing. I opened up a a Zoom. I just put a link on the Facebook chat, hoping maybe a couple people would come hang out with me because I was by myself. And it filled up with 100 people immediately. We did a YouTube live. The video of that, if you want to see myself and 100 of my best friends, all reacting to the news when we found out.
100% excluding Janet and myself.
Right. Well, you guys you had the direct.
We're not his
line,
best friends.
so.
We're not his best friends.
I said of 100 of my best friends, but that is on our YouTube channel. You can watch that if you'd like to, because after. I think it was your idea, Jan. Somebody had said, well, why don't you, or maybe it might have been Teresa Dunn said, can you put it on YouTube? So like an hour and a half into us on the Zoom, I just clicked the one button it took to stream that on YouTube. Then another 500 or so more people joined in at that point. So,
and in all
but
seriousness,
it was awesome.
Yeah, I was very, very bitter and jealous. But on the upside, it was so fun seeing so many names I know. I got to see what a bunch of people look like whose names I've seen or who I've chatted with on YouTube. It was really, really cool. There were just a lot of people I recognized, and that was really fun. It was very moving.
Yeah, it was. I was so glad I did. Jillian Pensabali from True Crime Obsessed hopped on there too, so she was on there with me. Who now Janet is threatening to make her replace her on our show.
Zach and I just assumed that
much.
Jillian would start hosting the follow-up and that he and I would go off and start our own sad podcast.
back to Truth and Just Us.
Yeah,
that's right.
No, I love you guys way too much, but I was glad Jillian was there. That was super cool.
No, it's great. It was great.
Incredibly emotional. As I was just saying earlier, I was reading live tweets from Lee Sanderlin, who was in the media room at the courthouse as they were happening, and obviously lost it pretty hard when he said that she overturned the conviction, and sent shivers down my spine when I read the tweet that the judge has ordered the bailiff to remove his shackles. Almost made me cry again right there.
It was
just
amazing
thinking about it. What an amazing thing. And so with that being said, there are, I know we have a lot of questions about Adnan. We also have a lot of questions about our current case. So I think, Janet, the way you've got it formatted is we're going to cover the current case stuff first, and then we'll move on to the Adnan stuff, because not everyone listening is invested in Adnan's case as us. So with that, we'll let you get right into, before we get into questions, I want to ask you guys what you guys thought. If we can kind of reset our brains to this case.
Sure.
What'd you think of these interviews, Zach?
I loved the way Bonnie came out hot on LeClaire.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like I know her. She reminds me so much of so many of my friends' moms, and like so many of my teachers growing up in Tucson, Arizona. Like, I'm so familiar with that. Like, I hate to say mama bear, but like I'm very familiar with that, and that's like something I felt very warm about. And I know not everyone felt that way, but I
know that wasn't supposed to be the takeaway, but
yeah,
like I really appreciate like when she came out.
It was just nice to hear somebody make fucking LeClaire take a step back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she was like the first person that was just not taking his shit. And whether that's just because she's the mama bear or because of her position as an assemblywoman, whatever the reason was, she had the confidence to put him in his place, which was just nice to hear, because he's I think he's awful. That's the way I think he's pretty bad. Don't like. Speaking of which, by the way, I'm still trying to work this out for this week's episode. But I want to think there are a couple of people, Chris Dolan specifically, along with several other listeners, mentioned in the fan page they wanted to hear Javier's fourth interview. And I swear the week that we went to Memphis, I swear I put out all of his interviews. This whole time I thought that I did, and I went and looked, and I didn't actually play his fourth interview, which is like a 12-13 minute, and it's LeClaire trying to get him to take a polygraph again. But there is some information in there, so I'm glad they like corrected me too, because I thought we'd covered it and I'd moved on from it. I don't think I'd even heard it before. So point being, I'm either going to fit that into this week's episode, because there's some relevant information there to what we're going to be talking about this week, or if not, I will get that out as a bonus in the next week for you guys to hear, because it's an important one. So I want to thank all of you listeners for always throwing me things like that, because I had moved on from that.
So the other quick sentiment I took away was honestly from Jacob's mother. She felt very concerned for his mental health with everything he had been through.
Right.
And I think that was big for me to pick that up. Like, I didn't feel as she was protecting him from the case as she was protecting him for his mental health.
Yeah, I got the exact same thing, and I thought that was interesting to hear, even though it was short. But to hear how he reacted to the, to finding this out and this happening to him, because my impression of him prior to hearing Austin talk about how broke up he was, that he moved away, and then his mom saying he had an emotional breakdown afterwards, so we've heard it from several people now.
Well, and he found his aunt.
Yeah, his favorite
something
aunt.
Yeah, it's rough. You feel bad for the guy.
Yeah.
What do you think, Janet?
Yeah, I thought there was some really great information in there. I thought it was interesting that the way Rolando described the sequence of events was most closely matched to the way Austin kind of remembered it. He was the only other person that sort of was close to Jacob, like kind of the closest to Jacob in all of this going on, who also had this kind of perception of I remember he was trying to get a hold of her and he was worried and he said something didn't feel right. And so to me, that kind of seemed to corroborate like whatever Austin and Jacob and Rolando's memories and experiences of it were kind of lived in that space. And that's also kind of what Jacob said in his police interviews, that he, whether or not the timing matches out perfectly, this idea of like, why am I not hearing back from her? Why am I not hearing back from her? Right. So I thought that was really interesting.
And it's interesting too. And that's some of the stuff we're going to cover this weekend on Sunday's episode. But again, it sounds like the not being able to get a hold of her was in the days. Did you get that impression too, that he's talking about the days leading up to the murder?
Yeah, it sounded like he was saying when he was at his house, he was even saying that, like when he was in Costa Mesa. So that's interesting. I don't know exactly what it means, but it was kind of good to hear that after Austin's later interview, because it did sort of feel like, oh, okay, well, however that exists, it sort of exists of a piece with those 2 or 3 guys. We've got plenty of great questions to get into, so I'm happy to jump in.
Let's do it.
If you guys are. Okay, cool. Well, first we'll start with Kristen H, who says, thanks for the Patreon behind the scenes video. I laughed a lot. Loved seeing the baby quails. So shout out to Kristen for enjoying the mayhem of last week's follow-up episode. It's a lot of fun.
For those of you that aren't on the Patreon, which again, it's $5 a month. You get all the episodes ad free, which is a big benefit, and you get an hour-long video pre-show before the follow-ups.
Last week got out of hand.
Well, we were having all kinds of, which by the way, for you patrons too, you should know that some of the money we get from Patreon is in my October budget. I have in to replace all of this equipment in here with the Patreon funds, because we were having all kinds of technical difficulties and it keeps happening. And so when in the midst of me having kind of a fit about that, we ended up doing a tour of the whole office studio, the bird pen outside. Zach got attacked by a pheasant.
Blame that one.
It was
on
action-packed.
Janet.
It was action-packed. And then she goes on to say, also, I'm glad you gave us the 3 interviews from the mamas and the brother. Did you find it interesting that Bonnie skirted around the question as to where Javier was after she dropped him off at Walmart? She didn't mention the whole time he was driving up around Becky's house.
I noticed it, but the thing is, she only knows what Javier told her, right? Because she wasn't with him, as far as what he did after that. But I would have thought that would have come up from him to her, but it really, to me, didn't seem like it was her focus. I think she was more. I certainly didn't get the impression from her that she thinks her son has anything to do with this. The impression I got from her was that she was pissed off at these people for coming to her house, and she's in an election year and people are now starting rumors wanting to know why the cops are at her house.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to acknowledge, Nicole, I just saw your chat about not being able to get through the Rolando interview. She says it sounded like the microphone was in a potato chip bag. Fair enough.
Yeah.
There are definitely a lot of rustling moments where we're all sort of going, wow, that's loud in my ear, and what is happening? So
It's so
appreciate
funny
you
when-
giving that summary at the top, Bob, too, in case people were like, I can't do this.
Yeah. And that's why I did that. Also, again, there wasn't a whole lot of really important information I needed to listen to. But yeah, as a podcaster, somebody that works in audio all the time, I find myself screaming in a lot of these police interviews. And you forget, like, it's probably a microphone that's on their vest or their belt or something. I'm like, idiot, stop scratching your chest. You're scratching the microphone. Like you can hear what they're doing when they do some of that stuff. But it is what it is.
Okay, next is from Jason says, it was very clear that Leclerc acted like a freshly neutered puppy around Bonnie. When was this interview? Was this before he settled on his gay theory or after? He definitely didn't have the stones to ask Mama Bear.
It was kind of right in the middle of it. This was October 5th. So Javier was interviewed on the 25th. So he interviewed at the scene on the 18th. He was interviewed on the 25th. I'm trying to remember when Corey Donovan's interview, some of the interviews where he starts asking the gay questions. But they were right in that time frame. The 5th actually, so the interview you did hear back in episode 13 or whatever it was, where they were at Javier's work and were asking him about taking a polygraph. That was also October 5th. So I don't know. So it was the same day. That interview was the same day as this interview with Bonnie. And I don't know timing wise, which was first or second.
I think the way that I took it was Javier's interview was first because Bonnie asked about that, like, why are you looking for him? He's like, oh, I found him at work and we talked to him.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I do think that's more, I mean, it became first.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense.
Good.
I couldn't remember because it's been 2 weeks since I listened to it, but
yeah.
So she said, so they talked to Javier at work. They missed a call from Bonnie and then they came back and then called Bonnie back. And that's what you heard.
Gotcha. And just, I picked Jason's because his choice of words made me giggle, but there were a lot of people who definitely noticed that it sort of seemed like maybe Leclerc was tempted to ask and kind of danced around it. So shout out to all of you who noticed that and called it out. Appreciated that. Nicole says, it seemed to me that Javi's mom played more of a friend role to her son and his friends. The fact that his mom was so invested in what Becky was or wasn't doing with her son was a little eyebrow raising for me. That being said, I'm not saying Javi had anything to do with the crime. But when you have an adult that has clearly been overly involved in their kid's life, you have to question whether she would be truthful or say what she needed to say to protect her son.
She seemed like she was being pretty honest to me because, I think anybody listening could tell, like, she wasn't really mincing words. Like she did. The impression I got was that she didn't care for Becky, or at least didn't care for Becky being around her house and around her son all the time. If you notice, she never says her name.
Yeah.
I can't say never because you might have, but I remember noticing that it's always that girl.
Well, yeah.
That girl.
That's definitely come up in the chat as well. Couple of different folks did not necessarily care for that, and I totally hear that.
But I don't think she was totally playing the friend. I think she had a good balance because she talked about like letting the friends stay and doing all this, but she's like, I wouldn't let them party here.
Yeah.
She's like, but it also sounded like there's at points where she was saying like, I'm not stupid. They're probably partying somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think she's totally playing that best friend role that some people might think she's playing to Javier.
She is to me. I mean, I could see myself in her a lot with my kids. For my older, I've got a senior in high school. I have rules. We just talked about some of it in the Patreon thing. I have, definitely have rules. We'll crack down when I need to, but also I'm pretty flexible with my kids, and my kids are able to talk to me about stuff, which it's hard to find that. You'll know when your kids get a little older, when they get to be teenagers, it's really hard to find that balance where they still respect you as a parent, but also feel comfortable talking to you about important things. So yeah, and she seems like she's right there. So from the impression I got from her anyway.
Yeah, and just to name you guys, Lauren and Hannah and Joanne, I going back to that girl thing, it did seem to me, I think she was very forthcoming with that she was like, I didn't approve, and so I think that sort of was maybe a reason that if she falls into that girl category is, thinking about her as a mom going, okay, so my son has a crush on this girl. This girl knows that my son has a crush on her. They're sleeping in the same bed together. She's told me, yes, I know your son has a crush on me, but I don't want that. Like, I think I'm sure she wouldn't have wished anything horrible like that on anyone. But it's almost like she's separating her as she's talking about it and she's thinking about those things. That's when the sort of protective, like, I don't care for that. Like, I don't care for that girl.
Right.
Maybe, feeling protective of her son. But it's not ideal in the circumstances of what happened that, there's still sort of a feeling of maybe resentment or something. But again, she reminds me so much of parents of friends of mine who, it's like, yeah, come over to my house, party here. Don't do something somewhere else. I want to know that you're here.
Right.
I don't approve, but I know you're going to do it. So why don't you know what I mean? So there's a lot of like, that felt very familiar to me.
Right.
Caroline says, while Bonnie Garcia's interview seems to match with Javi's recount of his day earlier, she wasn't home, so she can't say what he did that night except from what he told her. Do you think her campaign had anything to do with why Javi wasn't spoken to again after additional interviews were taken where people kept saying to talk to Javi? If there was a sense of like, let's just keep this on the down low. This is a tense time of year. We don't need any trouble. Or, I mean, I think that's what Caroline's kind of saying.
No, I think Javi had to do with that. So the interview that I'm going to put, so Javi was interviewed again on the 18th, the 25th, and the 5th. You've heard all of those. His final interview was on the 10th, 5 days later, and we hear a very different Javier in that interview as far as his attitude towards Leclerc. And it's pretty clear after that interview that he's done talking to them.
Got it. Jill F. says, observations. Javi's mom says she thinks Javi, Becky, and friends went to Del Taco for lunch on Sunday. I think crime scene photos show a Del Taco cup in Becky's car. 2. Jacob's mom says his favorite aunt died 2 weeks after Becky. Jacob's brother said favorite aunt died about 1 year after Becky, which is a big difference from 2 weeks.
Yeah, the Del Taco thing, I mean, it's good. They're both good observations. As far as the timing of when the aunt died, I don't think there's anything to fair. Remember, this is 10 years later. So and Rolando is not friends with Becky, so that wasn't a significant, for him, I could see him like lumping together. Those happened about a year apart. Whereas like for Jacob or his mom, that was, closer to them, it was more significant. The time frame would have been more significant for them, but good observations. I don't think that it's anything for us to worry about.
Yeah. I thought the Del Taco thing was interesting. Just the sort of like, oh, maybe that confirms that exact,
I'm loving where we're at right now. And I want to shout out Teresa Dunn, who I mentioned last week, I think that has been going through the phone records, and I have them now and I'm reviewing them. I'm going to get into them in this week's episode. And we're kind of going back and forth about cleaning things up for how they can be published. But she's put together 65 pages of phone
Teresa.
records.
Amazing.
But it's like this moment where we've got all these interviews, we've got all these accounts and all these hypotheses and theories about who was doing what when, and like now we have this account of the phone activity from Tuesday all the way on through the murders, and we're starting in. It's neat because you're able to like confirm, like, well, Javier said that he was with Becky on. I'm throwing a random example that's made up, but he was with Becky on Wednesday night. And you can look at the phone records, like, oh well, they were texting and calling back and forth on it. And then after 6 o'clock, she's using her phone and Javier's, but they're not talking to each other, so that adds up that they were together. And they went to Sky Valley to get the phone, and you can see the gap. Like you can start to like see where these things can be verified and pieced together based on the phone records now.
That's amazing. Teresa,
yeah.
You're awesome.
Yeah, and the Del Taco thing is like, that's what reminded me of it. It's like, okay, well, she said they went to Del Taco, and it's like, oh, but, and we saw a Del Taco cup in her car. So that part is, we're starting to again start to, what's nonsense, what can we rule out, and what is reality.
Right. Orpheus says, does this mean Jacob's brother, 1, never confirmed timeline that Jacob was visiting, and 2, provided insight into Jacob's state of mind between Thursday and Sunday? And to piggyback off the second point, would have been nice to know if Jacob really was telling people they were broken up or not in those days, or if maybe he thought the relationship still had a chance or was still alive.
I'm not sure I understand the question part of that.
Yeah, the first one is just like, okay, so they talked to him so late that he couldn't really help with the what nights was he actually there. That was sort of like a lost cause because they didn't bother following up on that in the first place.
Yes.
And then also like, and yet we have Rolando saying kind of what we talked about earlier, which is like, but he was really worried. I do remember that he was worried. He was worried about not hearing back from Becky. And And then, he just sort of like, and that sort of sent him to the place of like, gosh, it would have been nice to know if he was actually telling people that they were broken up, as we've heard, or if he wasn't telling people that and only Javi was telling people that.
Yeah, I say, because we heard it again from Bonnie, who said that they had broken up right before. But again, Bonnie's source of intel from that would probably come from Javier.
Right. Sarah KM says, I mentioned this in another post, but when LeClaire asked Bonnie if any of Javi's friends drove a truck, her immediate response was, what color? Any thoughts on this? Seemed a little strange, especially since apparently the only friend with a truck was Corey. Why not just say that? Why not just answer simply with that?
So, Kelly, leave that question in the way she just read it. And then, Janet, can you repeat it to me? Because I was reading a chat while you were saying. Kelly, clean this out. I'm so sorry.
Kelly, please leave all of this in. Again,
no.
I repeat, do leave all of this in. Was there something from the chat you want to share with the rest of the class, Bob?
I'm going. Well, while we're in our little pause here, that's going to get deleted out of the episode, Kelly, because I'm the boss and not Janet. Jill had said that she knows it's been an excellent week.
Oh, I see this.
And heavy week, but did I get her email about an additional interview with a girlfriend of Becky? I get so many emails. Jill, can you just put the name of that interview you're talking about? Because I will. I think I probably know who you're talking about, and those are some of the ones that I was saying that I don't know when to fill those in. Maybe next week, because I got Obsessed Fest next week, so I might get some of those out. But Joe, if you can go ahead and just put that name in the chat, and we'll get to it. And then Janet, can you tell me again what was the question you were asking? Just
you got it.
You don't have to reread it. Just give me the
Sarah just says. I think Sarah it bumped Sarah a little bit. That instead of sort of answering about Corey having a truck, since it seemed like that was the only friend that Bonnie knew had one, her immediate question was, what color? Like that sort of.
Oh. And so they're asking, like, why not just ask it?
Yeah, like, was there anything to that? Did you feel that as well? Or was it, what were your thoughts on how quickly she said, what color?
Yeah. All right, so we're coming back now, Kelly. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting way to respond to that, instead of just saying, yes, they have Corey has a truck, instead of like going the kind of roundabout way, like what color. And you wonder how much, I don't know how much interaction she has with her ex-husband, who's got connection to the case, and how much information is filtered from Javi Sr. to Javi Jr. to her. Or if, we don't have much of a baseline with Bonnie to know, like, is that kind of her? Would that be a typical, give me more detailed type of response? Or, so I don't know if it means anything.
Gotcha. Soledad, really tried to not butcher Soledad's beautiful name and instead absolutely butchered it. Soledad said, who do we think was calling and leaving messages for Jacob's mom? She kept asking the cop if he was the one that had been calling her, and he said no one from the sheriff's department had tried to contact her in years. Yeah, I was a little confused by that. I don't know if it means anything, but I was confused by that too, because at first it sounded like someone had just been calling her a bunch, but then it sounded like maybe she was talking about a year before that or something.
There is a lot of overlap we're hearing. So think like the 2015 Nick Crum interviews, when he's like, well, somebody was talking to me. What it was is there were defense investigators working on the case at the same time that the sheriff's department was working on it, and Ron Friedley had hired a private investigator. So, once the Robert and Christian had the charges dropped and had been released, and they were working on building another case, so they had their defense was tracking things down. I think the Friedley's PI was still trying to figure things out, and the police were. So I'd assume it's a PI from either the defense or from Ron Friedley.
Yeah, I kind of thought that might be the case. Rachel L. and some other folks had a question regarding Jacob's mom interview. In the recording, it sounded like they were arranging to fully interview her the following day. Do we know if that happened? Did you say something about that earlier?
I didn't, okay. But no, I don't. As far as I know, that interview never happened. That was the end of that contact. And we get a little context too when he's talking to Austin, and I think it was just Austin, maybe somebody else, when they're saying we'd love to, or I guess it was with Rolando too, where they're saying we'd love to talk to Jacob, but there's a barrier there. And from my understanding, the barrier is that just what his mom said. Like, if you have a subpoena, we'll talk to you. He's got an attorney and he ain't talking, and they never pursued that.
Yeah, that's actually a question that I have from Karen, who was a little curious about that. And just, I'll say before I read this, just wanting to be sensitive to, you know, everything that sort of surrounds this question and what you just brought up. But what did you think of Jacob's mother using the word recovery when saying Jacob was recovering from some sort of breakdown? She was reluctant to comment on it and then said recovery, which sounds to Karen more like an addiction issue than a psychological issue.
I don't want to speculate on it because I almost cut some of that stuff out, and had she given a diagnosis at all, I would have cut it out. But I
was actually shocked that he asked that. That was like, I don't know why, but it was so brazen, and it was such a thing that, like, I guess you gotta try, but it was such a HIPAA violation. Like, everything about it just felt like, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't ask that. Like,
And good for Jacob's mom too.
Oh, absolutely.
When he said,
private.
When he said that, does he have diagnosis? And she said that's private.
Yeah.
Like good for her, because that's, even if we want more information, I'm always actually happy to see someone who is doing the things that we try to teach people to do, which
100%.
is,
and I said it. I mean, I said it earlier. I don't necessarily feel like she was protecting Jacob from this case. I think she was protecting his mental health.
Jacob. She was protecting Jacob. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's so true, Zap. I'm so glad you said that, because it was really good to hear from his mom and to hear from his brother, because, as many people have mention and in the follow-up and elsewhere, of course, we do have this impression of Jacob from his own behavior in the interviews, that he was really chill about it, or that he seemed nonchalant, or friends who said, oh, he didn't seem bothered by it, and then we have his family members saying no, he had a very strong reaction to the combination of that and what happened with his aunt. And it really puts into perspective, like, sometimes people can't express their feelings, or they choose not to, or they're uncomfortable about it. But sometimes that means you're bottling it up even more. And then when it does come out, you don't know how to handle it and stuff. So that made me feel a lot of compassion for him too. And also just sort of, wait, no, I totally lost my train of thought. Kelly, feel free to cut this out. Keep all the other stuff in. Again, you are going to need to leave the rest in. So this will be a good place for you to chop just a little snip for edit for time's sake, and snip this little part out so that you have time to keep all the other stuff in. Oh,
this is what I was going to say. For an ad.
I do. And we're back. As I was saying, no, I think just this idea of, it kind of serves as a good springboard for, again, us to just kind of check in with the idea of the fact that there are people who do survive in one way or another situations like this, and are potentially re-traumatized by being approached by it, being asked to talk about it. And that doesn't mean that you don't want to do a good job and investigate and follow up. But if we hear with this that it's possible that, he's going to reignite some of that anxiety or that sadness or the depression by talking about it. So I don't know. I just thought it was a good way of reminding all of us, like, people get re-traumatized by stuff when it's dug into again, No more intel at all on the Marine Becky was dating. A couple folks just wanted to circle back on that, since we heard it, as you said.
Nothing, but it was important to me to hear, because that was when Robert mentioned, I think there was a Marine, and then some other people were saying, no, there was no Marine. And there was kind of, that was looked on, I think, negatively about Robert, that he was like making up some imaginary person to try. But according to Bonnie, who said she heard from Becky herself that she was in fact dating a Marine. So that's at some point, and that's all we know. We don't know any more details about it. I read somewhere in the case file that the Marine's name was Dane. I can't remember where that came from. But I haven't seen anything else to verify or get any more information about him. But to me, it's worth noting that she was in fact dating a Marine, according to Bonnie, who said she heard that directly from Becky.
Got it. Sarah G was just kind of thinking about, this idea of where Becky was staying, and did she have a regular couch circuit? Were those the only two places she stayed? I think we do know that she also stayed at Claire's, right? And was just trying to figure out like if she was maybe doing it to avoid home, or if it really was just a matter of convenience and sort of safety working those late nights. I would just add to that here we have Bonnie saying that Becky was over there a lot. So it sounds like she didn't say, and then that stopped once Becky was dating Jacob. So I don't know. It sounds like maybe they weren't necessarily always at Jacob's, or.
Yeah, and I had a hard time kind of parsing through that when she was, because we talked about this last week about, she was basically living with Jacob.
Yeah.
But then after that, she was with Javier. She obviously spent some time and nights with Javier. So I wish they would ask a little bit more. I guess maybe they felt they didn't have a reason to, but like, was this more recent? Was it just in the last week, or that she was like spending the night at your house? Because she said that she pointed out that she was there spending the night on Saturday night. Which to me was where a lot of it's like how much of these feelings and stuff that she had going on all came from her like coming home on Sunday morning and being like, God, why is she here spending the night?
But I remember being that age and I never spent the night at home. Right. Like around that time frame, you were always going. You're always doing something. You're hanging out with somebody. You're at your girlfriend's. You're at a buddy's. You're at wherever.
But it seemed like she the impression I get is that she had moved in. I'm doing air quotes. Moved in with Jacob, where she was basically, but she was like nothing was official. Like I'm thinking like she has her toothbrush and her stuff there, and that's kind of her like main headquarters. But she also spends the night a lot at her friend Claire's house, sometimes at Javier's house. And I don't know that it doesn't seem like, based on phone records, so you see a lot of communication back and forth with her house. I don't think it was because she had an issue with her house. Mm-hmm. It was just that's where her boyfriend lived. That's where her friends lived. Mm-hmm. That's where her work was. So she pretty much stayed down there.
Side note, I moved in with my wife like that. Like she had an apartment in her friends, and I was there all the time. And they're like, you might as well just say you live here and pay a little bit of the rent and make it easier on everybody.
And that's how he tricked Michelle into marrying him. For $225 a month in rent.
Yeah. That's all I have for the current case episode. Everything from here on out is Adnan. Probably half as many questions. So I don't think it wouldn't be like a whole other hour, but.
Okay, well, let's do it.
Okay. Well, many folks were just kind of touching base on the Facebook page to follow up to see how they could continue to support Adnan. There are a few different places you can go. You can go to the follow-up post on the Facebook page, because a couple of fine folks provided, I think, some links. Mm-hmm. Is there anywhere else we can send? Certainly, Rabia has tweeted about it. Yeah, she's got stuff up there.
There are two places, and Patreon. I would say, what's that?
Oh, I said and Patreon. That's where I do like $25 of something like for just towards Adnan's legal stuff. So you can do it on Patreon as well.
Right now, Rabia is putting out. I just saw this morning she put out on like Instagram and Twitter. There were links. There's one link where you can donate money to help Adnan transition back to home. As we know from Ed 8, there's a lot of expense to that. And then there's another link to buy shirts and merchandise that say, I think, #We Freed Adnan. And so both of those are the best places. According to Rabia, those are the best places to go to help support him.
Perfect. A lot of other folks had the same thought I had, which if you listened to the end of last week's follow-up after the credits, I was like, this has to be Colin's bombshell. This has to be the bombshell. If you're a listener to Undisclosed, you know that Colin's been holding onto a bombshell for what feels like 10 years. And Rabia did Instagram live on that same day when we recorded. So it was last Wednesday. And she said none of it was Colin's bombshell. Someone asked in that chat, and she said none of it's Colin's bombshell. So, y'all, I don't know what this bombshell is, but one day we'll know. Rabia promised, she said, one day when this is all squared away, we promise we will tell you everything. We'll tell you what we couldn't say at the time, including the bombshell.
Yeah, this was a surprise to Rabia and everyone. Like, I don't think they may have had a little more heads up than the general public did, but I think maybe hours or a day when the motion was filed. Like, this was something Marilyn Mosby's office did on their own, which speaks volumes to what just happened here for the Adnan guilty crowd. I had some jackass tweeted at me or messaged me something. She's like, you're so, something like, you're so ignorant. Obviously he's guilty. I thought you were smarter than that. And I was just like, right. Yeah. Too bad I'm not as smart as you to figure this out. I'm sure you know much better than the fucking prosecutor who has the entire case file and thinks that he should go free. Sorry, that's my little rant.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Don't come at me with that shit. I'm in a new place in my life where I just tell you to go fuck yourself.
That's right.
He sure is. He really is.
No, I've been getting some of that too. And it's like, it rolls off so quick. It's so nice when you just are positive. Like when you're just like, no, like I got nothing for you. There's just, no, it doesn't bother me. Kristen says, what does house detained mean? How long is that in effect?
30 days. So he was sent home house detained, which I assume means ankle bracelet. Basically, he was released without bail on his own recognizance. I haven't seen or heard the details of his house detained, but typically that would mean like an ankle bracelet. But they have, so as of right now, Adnan, the conviction has been vacated, but he is still charged with the crime. So if we're looking at a timeline, like if you go back in the Wayback Machine and you rewind, so where he's at right now is after he's been arrested, but hasn't been tried yet. Now, back in 1999, he did not get bail and he was serving that time. He was spending that time in jail. So that's where he is, legally speaking, where he's at right now, is he's still charged with the crime and hasn't been tried yet. The state has 30 days to either put in for a trial date to retry him, and if they are not prepared to do that within 30 days, then they have to drop the charges, which would take him back to the place as though he had never even been arrested for this. However, and I'll break, and this may be answering some of the coming questions, but so you understand, I'll put it all together here to understand the process. If that happens, if they drop the charges, that does not mean that they can't recharge him later. So they could, he's free and clear. They have no hold over him. They have no way to detain him. He is not charged. He's just a free man. And on his record, it looks as though he has never even been charged with this crime. But if they found new evidence, they could recharge him at that point and then have 30 days to get a trial scheduled. Some people were asking me about like double jeopardy, but it's not double jeopardy because the procedure that just went through has made it as though the first two trials, because remember there was a mistrial, as though the trials it never happened. They don't exist. It's taken us all the way back.
Other than spending over 2 decades in
23 years in prison, but just legally speaking.
Yep.
And then as far as, and of course, a lot of people are asking, will they try him again? I'm sure with some of these questions, we'll get into like talking some nitty gritty details. But at a basic standpoint, I would say there is a zero possibility they're going to try him again. Because remember, they had a very weak case against him to begin with. But the case was built upon Jay Wilds saying that he saw the body in the trunk and helped Adnan bury the body, gave this account of how, when, and where they went that day and how they did it. And that was supposedly corroborated by the cell phone records. That's all they had on Adnan. Now, there's all the stuff we know. So first of all, those couple things. One, Jay will never testify again. First of all, I don't think that he would. And I don't think anybody would attempt to have him testify again because his story had changed multiple times before the trial. His story has now changed since the trial in his Intercept interview. And he even had made comments to Amy Berg that Ritz and McGillivray made him say things. So all that is out there and all would be impeachable evidence coming to trial. So Jay's out. So you don't have a witness saying anything about seeing him or helping him. The cell phone records have been deemed to be completely unreliable and can't be used. So they would have to try him with no cell phone records and no J, which means there's no case. Now, if they found new evidence or something, that would be part of it. But based on what they have now, the defense would be now armed with all of the hard work that Rabia and Susan and Colin and so many of you guys have all done. There's all this new evidence, like we have verified with 100% certainty that Coach Tsai absolutely alibis Adnan. We've gone through the historical weather data, and we know that there was exactly one day during Ramadan where Adnan would have been fasting that was over 50 degrees where they had practice, and that was the day of the murders. All the things that was done to break down the Nisha call. The Nisha calls out, which people still like to quote that to me, and also go fuck yourself. If you want to talk to me about the Nisha call.
Those are just people who listened to Serial, and that was it. Yeah, I think
it's all this stuff has been discredited. So as far as where things stand now, in my opinion, there is zero possibility that Adnan would get retried. And I got more I could ramble about, but I want to see where the questions are so we can direct them towards those questions.
Sure. However, I just want to add that is an awesome thing that the prosecution did, because they didn't have to list all of those things in their petition.
Right.
And the fact that we are now armed with, even if, she leaves office and the incoming prosecutor's like, no, I actually do want to try him. Like, it looks so bad for them that their own office said, let's go ahead. Like, it was such a gift. And they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew that they were saying, no, we're going to pack everything in here so that you got nothing if you disagree with us and you want to go forward with this. We're going to go ahead and cut all of the legs out from under this. It's so great.
Because starting in January, the new DA will take over. Yeah, she has set it up to where and this is not like cheating. What she did was make clear and put on the record, like, hey, new prosecutor, if you want to try him, you're going to do it fair, and you're going to do it by the book, and you're not going to use all this bullshit to try him again.
Yes.
And that was amazing that she did that. And are there any questions in there? Because somebody mentioned in the chat that I want to talk about a little bit at some point. Does anybody have any questions about what the Attorney General said?
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah. So, but
okay,
let me just make sure. There definitely was something. I just wanted to make sure. I can't remember if it's in here or not. Why don't you go ahead and address it now, and I'll shout it out as I scroll down.
So Brian Frosch from the Attorney General's office, which is who had the case file for these last 7 years. And oh man, in the press conference was Marilyn Mosby throwing shade at them. And without naming names, at them, at Thiru Vignaraja, who is the one that was prosecuting the post-conviction hearings. But Brian Frosch from the Attorney General said this is all grossly misstated. All of this evidence was available to the defense to review at any time. Like, basically saying, like, how dare you say we hid this? But that is absolute bullshit, because the defense, the Attorney General's office, did let the defense view the case file. Susan Simpson was there with them. They went through every single page of it. And this information was not there. Someone had pulled it out.
Yeah.
When they reviewed the case file. And it sounds like, which I did get to, and I'm sure we have questions about Serial too. Sarah Koenig with Serial did put out an update episode, and she gave information that I hadn't heard yet. So I'm guessing it must have come from Mosby. But she said this information about these suspects were handwritten notes by the police that were in the file. And again, Susan said those were not in there before.
Right. Yes. Marianne and many other folks are curious about whether Adnan is going to have, once this piece of it is sort of over, if they don't renew charges, or if they drop the charges, what has to happen for Adnan to be able to sue the state of Maryland for wrongful conviction? Is that an option? Talk to us about that.
I think it's an option. It goes state by state, but there are federal statutes. I think it's the 1983 is the type of lawsuit they call it. Typically, you have to be proven actually innocent. If they drop the charges on him, I don't know, because he's kind of in limbo there, right? Because like they've dropped charges on him, but they haven't declared him actually innocent. maybe at that point he could. Now, if an arrest is made and somebody else is convicted and he's proven to be actually innocent, then I would think for sure at that point he could.
And that's really a lot of the other kind of chatter that we're all speculating on is, do they know more? And I see this in here, Teresa, and some of y'all, that, everybody's kind of going, well, they sure gave a lot of information in that petition, but is it possible they're holding back even more? And are they closer to knowing who did it than they are letting on? And could they make an arrest of someone, like perhaps even within the 30 days that they have the decision that they can make about Adnan? Like, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I suspect they've got a pretty damn good idea who did it.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, and with along the lines of the handwritten note, Orpheus in the chat and the YouTube chat said they didn't think that handwritten notes had to be included or was dependent on state jurisdiction. It doesn't matter what the medium is. Information has to be included. What we learned from the handwritten notes is that the police knew about this information. The police knew that I'll just give it. None of this. This is just my interpretation of the motion. I think it's pretty clear that Alonzo Sellers, Mr. S, is one of the suspects, and that's just from me. That's not coming from anybody else.
Yeah.
But so he's the person that found the body, and it doesn't say exactly who's tied to what thing.
Right.
But it sounded like it seemed to me they were saying that he had a motive to kill Hay, and he threatened to kill Hay and make her disappear. If not, it's the other suspect who I'm also 98% sure I know who that is too.
Yeah, that's out there by a lot of different people have
I think
said.
it's Bilal is the other person who I don't think has any connection to the crime, but definitely stuff was withheld from them. But the point being, the police knew the person who found the body and failed the polygraph had a motive to kill, and what the motion says is means, motive, and opportunity to kill, and had threatened her. That information, whether it's a handwritten note or a typed up report or whatever, that information had to be turned over to the defense, and it never was.
Right. Yeah. The who threatened to kill her is, I will be very glad when we have a definitive answer on that. That is so troubling and so shocking that was just in there.
Yeah.
That was in there. Oh, Baltimore. Bless. Okay. Of course, people are wondering if this just means that, another person that you've always felt deeply needed more looking into as much as possible would be Dawn, and whether or not any of this negates that. I think you've already kind of publicly on the YouTube even said, like, I don't think it negates him at all. Am I right about that?
Yeah. So, and that's only because we don't have enough information. So we know, based on what the Marilyn Mosby's filings or her office's filings, that the police knew that someone told them that one of these suspects had a motive to kill Hay and had threatened her. If those things are true, so there's two different levels here. Those are absolutely Brady violations. That is information that the defense could have used and would have used to present a defense against this. That, hey, why are you looking at him when we have this information? This person's over here. Whether that means they actually are the persons responsible is a completely separate issue. And I don't have enough information to know. Like, I don't know what was the motive. Could it be just that, could it be Bilal and has something to do with Adnan dating someone who wasn't Muslim? I have no idea what that is. So I haven't seen enough information about the two suspects for me to say, oh, well, then it must not have been, anyone else. And I've, as you guys know, very publicly, I've always thought that Don needed a much closer look. I think it's very clear on the record that he and his mom and stepmom took active steps to create an alibi for him, to falsify time cards for him. He was unreachable until after 1 o'clock in the morning that night. There's all these reasons. So to me, like, I mean, I've never accused him or said he did it, but to me, yeah, he still remains a suspect for me in my mind until I see evidence that someone else did it. So so no, it hasn't changed my opinion on that, but I am certainly very happy that we find out here's all the evidence and the DNA comes back and it was this person over here and he had nothing to do with it. Then I'm perfectly happy to concede that well, you know, there was reasons that he should have been a suspect, but he didn't do it. Just the same as these people, these two suspects, there's obviously reason for them to be suspects, but it doesn't mean that they did it.
Right. And the people in YouTube have grabbed on to your theory that perhaps it was Alonzo Sellers who threatened her. There are people like, wait, what? But just to reiterate, we don't know that. We don't know that it's him at all, because he definitely, like, I know we talked about this before, but he did not work at Woodlawn. We would know that. That would be like everywhere.
He worked at Copeland University, which was close by. And
we don't know what kind of interaction they would have had for him to be making that threat.
Yeah, and the motion didn't say that. The motion was ambiguous on purpose. So it said there's these two suspects, and here are things that could be applied to either of the suspects. So we don't know. They could have been talking about Blah. That was we don't, or whoever the other suspect is. That's who I think that the other suspect is. Right. But I went season 1, episode 32 is an episode I did on Mr. S. I think I posted a link to it as a good refresher, but I listened back to it because I couldn't remember all the because I remember at the time, and I think I said it in that episode, when he failed the polygraph, his story about finding the body doesn't make sense. But it was what I said in that episode was, at least from what we know, is that he has no connection to Hay,
right?
No opportunity to be around Hay. So I can't see him as being a good suspect unless there's some reason why he might have had means, motive, opportunity. Now, if that exists, that would certainly change my opinion of that. Right. But in that episode is when I listening back, I recalled it that he didn't. I thought he was a janitor at Woodlawn. That's just what my mind did. But no, it wasn't Woodlawn. It was at the high school. It was at Copeland College, which was still right in the same neighborhood.
Gotcha. Brandy C says, will you possibly have an interview with Adnan at some point in the future?
I hope so. I've been very hands off with a lot of this. When we got the news on last Wednesday about the motion, I've been there with Ed and know how insane it is, and so much media and everybody wanted to contact. So I just sent Robbie a message and said, I'm so happy. I love you. Just wanted to, you don't need to respond, whatever. And she replied back a few hours later and said, love you too. Can't wait to see you at Obsessed Fest. This is not my place right now to be adding to all of that. So I hope that, once things settle down, I would love to have Adnan on and have a conversation, but I want to give him his space. I want to give Rabia and Adnan's family their time. And I know Rabia, I'm sure, has media things going on between the podcast, and you saw in all our Insta videos that there's camera crews around. So I'm guessing they're doing an update for the documentary. So I'm just letting all that happen right now.
I'm really happy you said that, because I think a lot of people need to understand that Adnan needs time. He needs time. Like, rushing him out. I mean, this is amazing that he's free, but all these people hounding him now for interviews and wanting to see him and talk to him and take pictures with him. That's not what he needs.
Yeah.
He needs time to adjust. I mean, he's had his life taken away.
Yeah. It's exactly right. And I said my position, because I've had a lot of people that message me about stuff, and someone messaged me and they were like, you don't seem very excited about that. First of all, I don't do much social media.
Yeah.
But secondly, I'm just like, I don't see myself as in a position. This had nothing to do with me or anything that I've done. This right now, I think the focus needs to be on Adnan. It needs to be on Rabia and Susan and Colin. It needs to be on Marilyn Mosby and her amazing team that did this, and Adnan's attorneys. Like, it's not that I mean, those of you that watched the live saw how emotional I am about this, but I just really feel strongly that this is not my place to be, waving a flag saying, look at me, about it. Because people were asking about, will I do an update episode? And I said, no, I'm not, because Undisclosed did an update episode. They did a very good job. All the information's there. I'm not going to do another episode recanting or restating everything they stated. Just go listen to Undisclosed and do that. It's not because I don't care. It's just because I just don't think it's my place right now to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's wonderful and totally respect that and agree. Connie says, is there any way for Kevin Urich, Greg McGillivray, and William Ritz to be held accountable for their actions?
Probably not. The police and prosecutors have immunity.
Isn't Urich a judge now?
I think so. Yeah,
if that's true, that should make you not ever sleep at night again.
Right. I hope that I had hopes that Mosby's office might file charges against them. She didn't. Maybe that's still coming, but we've seen it before. I think there was one prosecutor in Texas a few years ago that actually got convicted of prosecutorial misconduct and served 11 days in jail. The immunity is just too strong with it. I don't know if it's worth the effort. He should be disbarred. As far as him and Thiru, in my opinion, should be disbarred because Thiru should have known that stuff was in that file too. While he continued to fight against, after the cell phone evidence was proven that it should have overturned the conviction, found a way to fight it with a time barred argument, knowing full well the whole time that this information was in the file. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever see that. But yeah, in a perfect world, I think that Kevin Urich should have to serve 23 years in prison so that he can do what, because of his actions, caused Adnan to serve 23 years in prison. I think a very fair sentence for him would be for him to serve 23 years in prison. But unfortunately, it's not a perfect world.
Yeah. Aaron just had a nice comment about, like, maybe, like, if Adnan ever needed advice, the idea of kind of connecting him with Ed Eights, which I thought was very sweet and lovely. Just the idea
of and Damien too.
Yeah. Yeah. And Grayson was just, kind of, again, echoing everyone's excited. It's amazing that he's been able to walk out. Is there anything he can do to sort of prove his innocence? If will he be heard? What do you think about the timing of all of this, of Marilyn Mosby leaving office? And we've already even talked about, with this case, the current case that we're working on, this idea of, like, how politics play a role in the lives of people that have profound ramifications. Any thoughts on timing, anything like that?
I think the fact that Mosby's about to leave office speaks volumes to the legitimacy of this, right? Like, if she was, like, getting ready to go into an election and she was like, I'm going to, do this to get everybody on my side. The fact that she's like, I've only got 4 months left to do the right thing and I'm going to do it, I think is pretty amazing. As far as what can Adnan do, I think Adnan, I'm trusting in Mosby and her team right now. If you watch the press conference afterward, she said, we are not ready to declare Adnan innocent. And then she said very clearly, yet.
Right.
But we're waiting on DNA to come back. And she made multiple statements indicating that this investigation is fully reopened and they are not going to stop until they find out who killed Hay, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, she'd be lucky to come out on the right side of this. That's be quite an achievement for that office ever at all. With anything that has ever touched this case, it would be amazing for her to be able to clean that up.
I love the stance of justice over convictions.
Yes.
I think that was huge.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought
that up. And to be fair, I know Mosby's taken a lot of shit for some stuff she's done. There's a lot of politics that go on there. But I'll say that, and I don't know much about all that, but I know that this is not like this new, like, hashtag she put together for Adnan's case. Like, she has had a track record of going back in, looking at bad convictions and getting them overturned and getting them freed. And this justice over convictions has been her motto for a long time. And it's probably what cost her the election, because she lost the primary. But she did stomp Thiru, thankfully. I just want to make that clear that this is not something that's new. Like, that has been the way she has operated, which is extremely admirable.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone needs a refresher post The Wire, We Own This City on HBO, which also has David Simon's DNA, and is based off of a book that a current Baltimore reporter did. It's a great resource for really hearing all the ways in which Baltimore is broken and all the ways in which it reflects the brokenness of cities everywhere. Almost done with everything I've got on this page.
Real quick before you go on another question, I want to point out Samantha in the YouTube chat says, "Can we change the Constitution to reflect the idea of justice over conviction, please?" The sad part, Samantha, is the Constitution's already written that way.
Yeah.
And that's what's so sad about our criminal justice system. Nowhere in our criminal justice system does it ever say anything about clearance rates and win rates for prosecutors. The entire thing is written on the idea of fairness and justice. And what we need is prosecutors like Marilyn Mosby who are willing to actually do that job properly.
Yeah. Richard says, and this is where we come into the Serial thing. Eric and Richard both said, what do you think of all the vitriol being directed at Serial? Or is Serial getting too much attention when there are so many other places that more fully explored it, like Undisclosed, like You, etc.?
It's a tough question. There is certainly the accurate statement that without Serial, none of us would be doing what we're doing. In Anand's case, would never have had the attention that it got. And so we should always, I think, forever be grateful for that. But that being said, I don't think that gives a free pass. I have serious issues with Sarah Koenig and Serial. It's not because she didn't, because people are like, well, she was a journalist and she was being neutral, but she was intentionally ambiguous. She had information that it seems as though she intentionally left out or intentionally skewed to make it more ambiguous, to make it more interesting. A lot of the trolling and the huge negative movement against Adnan also exists because of Serial, which that's going to happen anyway, but it was made worse because things were intentionally left out, because things were intentionally, I think, misrepresented. And I also have there's some things that happened personally after Serial came out when it made it very clear as that she was presenting herself as just having so much buy-in and really cared about this case, and it certainly seemed like that wasn't actually the case. She would only poke her head around when there was an opportunity to make another podcast episode, this one included. No one's heard a word from her about Adnan's case since 2016, and then the day's released, she's the first one sitting there with a microphone making an episode. I'll say this, I understand where the vitriol comes from. I also understand the people that are like, hey, without her and without Serial, I wouldn't even probably have this job, neither would Rabia. But the biggest thing that drives me crazy is when I've heard her talking about the case in the last several days, where she's been interviewed and quoted and written, not one fucking word about the Undisclosed podcast. She's mentioned Rabia.
She said, she's like, Rabia and others have done a little deeper digging. I think she put it that way.
Yeah, like the fact that she has not, because what she should be saying is, after Serial, Rabia started her own podcast, Undisclosed, with these two amazing lawyers, and they did an incredible deep dive and uncovered and proved things that I said, like the wrestling match was happening. They proved that wasn't true, and that, but they get no credit at all. To sum up what Rabia has done is, when Rabia and some others did some other digging, is so fucking infuriating to me. So that's my position on it. Is like, I certainly acknowledge we wouldn't be here today without her, but then again, this happened because of the work of the prosecutors, not because of a podcaster.
100%. And my sort of statement about this was, I accept that in this reality, exactly the way it played out, and we have Serial to thank for it. Having spent the last almost 10 years closely watching Rabia and everything she's done, and watching Justin Brown, and watching all the people who fought and fought and fought, I am as sure as I can be without never knowing that this would have come out anyway.
Yes.
I really believe that. Sarah was like the first person that she reached out to. If Sarah had said no, I firmly believe someone else would have said yes. And they could have had polls somewhere else. It could have gone to David Simon. It's a story about a wrongful Baltimore conviction that's fascinating and juicy. And I just think I appreciate Serial in this reality. I also feel like we would have had, like, I don't think Serial is what caused, period, full stop, the true crime podcast movement. I don't believe that for a second. I think there's something called the collective conscience. I think the reason that people were sucked into that is because it was prime for that to happen. And I believe it would have happened anyway. I just do. That doesn't mean I disrespect Serial, but I do think that hanging it all on that is such a misrepresentation of the fact that Robbie was never going to stop. And she would have found someone who would have told the story. We'll never know.
If she didn't tell it herself.
Absolutely.
Undisclosed could have happened even without Serial because she was desperate to keep fighting and to get this story into people's ears. Right. And one way or another, I don't believe for a second that Rabia would not have pushed this across the finish line one way or another.
And the good news is right now there was a wonderful outcome. So we can, we can talk about this and hash it out, and at the end of the day, Adnan is home with his family. So let's not lose sight of that,
For sure.
That's all I have except for Kathy McElhaney's final question. Just thought I would tack this on at the end. She says, do you have anything to say to Nancy Grace?
No, I don't need to waste airspace for good old Nancy. Listen, I found out, my friend Shanti told me, because he knows Nancy personally. He's like, no, she's actually really sweet. It's all an act. And when I went on her show, I realized that's 100% true. She is sweet when she's off camera, and it is all an act. And that's what's so infuriating to me, is because she's talking about cases that involve real people and real people's lives, and for a shtick to make money, to just always pick a side like that is, she'll probably make another show about it now. About how, now I can't sleep because I realized I might have been wrong about something. Who knows? Right. But anyway, enough about that. Enough about shitting on other people. This is a great week, and we're making progress in our case. I'm working. Hopefully, excuse me. It's a great week, and we're making progress in our current case. I'm waiting right now. We're trying to get scheduled. There's a news outlet in Palm Springs that wants to do a story with me about our podcast and Robert and Christian's case. So hopefully, if you're in the Palm Springs area, the Coachella Valley, you'll hear that and see that hopefully very soon, if that pans out. This weekend's episode, as I mentioned, I'm going to be going through. The plan is, and again, I haven't finished writing yet. I'm still just researching all those pages of phone records that Teresa's put together. But the plan is to go through the phone records through the perspective of what can we figure out that Becky was doing. Where was Becky? Who was she with? What was she doing from about Tuesday through the time of the murders, through the phone records? And then we have that other interview with Javier that may be part of that, or I may put that out as a bonus. So that's what's coming this weekend. Thank you guys all so much for joining us, and for being here on the YouTube Live. For those of you that were with us for the Zoom during Anand's thing, and this is a week where we can just take a deep breath and say, hot damn, the work we're doing matters.
Bob, truly thank you for Monday's Zoom. From all of us, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
You're very welcome, and I'm glad that so many of you are able to. It was Jillian put it best when she said that was the therapy session that I didn't know I needed, and that's what it was for me too. It was just a real quick idea. Let's hang on together, because you all are my people, and I wanted to be with you guys in that moment, and we're able to do that. With that being said, let's end this and not make Kelly work too much longer on her vacation. She's in Ireland. She's on assignment in Ireland. Right.
That's right. Love you, Kelly. Great work. Oh, I hope you're having a great
drinking
time.
a Guinness while she's editing our podcast. All right, that's it. We'll see you guys next week. Love you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Stop our audio.
Don't worry, I'm not crying.
You are crying, and you almost made